The 21st century has brought about a number of new threats to the United States, the most notable of which happened on September 11th, 2001 with the attacks on the World Trade Towers in New York City. This sparked a massive reorganization of different federal security departments within the United States. One of the most talked about agencies today as a result of 9/11 is the Department of Homeland Security. Within the Department of Homeland Security, such agencies as Customs, Border Patrol, ICE, and local and federal agencies work cohesively to protect the United States borders. The focus of this presentation or research is the Mexican/United States border. More specifically, we're going to look at drug trafficking from Mexico into the United States and how it is viewed on a domestic and national level. The leading questions that we're seeking to answer as follows. What kind of impact has the drug trafficking issue had on Mexico and the United States relations? Number two, how have the drug cartels positively or negatively affected the border issues? And how has the drug trafficking business impacted society in Mexico? Number three, does the U.S. believe that the Mexican government is involved in the whole drug cartel business? If so, how? And number four, is there anything that the United States is trying to do to alleviate some of the pressures that drug cartels are placing on the Mexican government? We have used secondary research method using U.S. publications such as the Washington Post, NPR, the Virginian Pilot, San Antonio Express News, and Voice of America. However, to get a more objective perspective on the issue, not just a United States perspective, we have incorporated other publications such as the World Bank and Journal of International Affairs and the BBC. Mexico is the leading transshipment point for marijuana, cocaine, and other illegal drugs. The demand for illegal drugs in the United States continues to motivate drug cartels within Mexico and other parts of Central America to keep these routes in working order. Today, 7 Mexican drug organizations dominate the landscape and control trafficking routes in the United States. They are 1. The Sinaloa, 2. The Tijuana, 3. The Juarez, 4. The Beltran Leyva organization. When you have Los Zetas, the Gulf, and La Familia Michoacana. Before 2006, the president of Mexico was Vicente Fox, and he had a relatively relaxed approach to the violent drug cartels. The current president of Mexico is President Felipe Calderon. Each president is allowed to serve only one term, which consists of 6 years. President Felipe Calderon took the office in 2006, and within weeks, Calderon had deployed nearly 6,500 troops to combat the violent drug cartels. The political system of Mexico is very complex, and many have speculated that at many state and local levels within Mexico, the political leaders are involved in one way or another with the drug cartels. At the very least, they're accused of turning a blind eye. The truth is that nearly all of the local Mexican police forces are deeply corrupted, being brought off by the highest bidding cartel. Today, the Mexican army has nearly 45,000 troops combating the drug cartels, the drug cartels who are heavily armed like military forces. The fact that these gangs are heavily armed is another issue of trafficking, only in this case the exporters are primarily coming out of the United States. These weapons that are available to the cartels are becoming a highly publicized issue as they are the main cause of violence that's rapidly increasing with each day. The total death count, including police, military, citizen, and gang members, is nearly 45,000 since the beginning of the war when Felipe Calderon took office in 2006. Take for instance an occurrence in 2009 where nearly 40 men were reported as driving up and opening fire with automatic weapons and grenades on a police station in San Francisco de los Romos, a town in Mexico. After a 10-minute gunfight with the men, with the police, the men got into their SUVs and drove away, leaving 2 officers dead and 3 injured. Speculation has been made that in the past few years the violence is beginning to increase dramatically. This cartel-related violence is beginning to spill over into the United States, even with increased efforts by Homeland Security. This violence has been attributed to the fracturing of these 7 criminal organizations. They are all competing for control of trafficking routes and for for their own space and the territory within Mexico's borders. Both inter and intra-cartel violence is on the rise. Inner violence is between the organization themselves, while intra-violence deals with members within an organization, which is used to assert dominance and maintain loyalty among themselves. The violence that is associated with drug trafficking is beginning to cause Americans to take notice and become weary for their own well-being, especially those living in border states like California, Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. Many Americans fear traveling to Mexico as of recent, and this seems to be the focal point of all U.S. publications as related to the drug war in Mexico and on the U.S. border. From a Washington Post article in 2009, I found that a similar incident as that in San Francisco de los Romos, I found a similar incident where Mayor Estanslo Garcia Santeliz, who was 37, was murdered and left beside his car in the Mexico city of Palomas. This is right across the border from New Mexico. It also states that Americans had often gone to Palomas seeking cheaper medical treatments such as dentist visits and to fill medical prescriptions, since the price is much lower for medical treatment in Mexico. The focal point seemed to highlight this and how Americans are being affected. They're not able to travel over there anymore. When it comes to political issues, Mexico's government involvement in the whole drug trafficking business has become murky due to the local involvement as mentioned earlier. However, one thing can be certain, that the president of Mexico, Felipe Calderon, is engaged in a domestic war with the drug cartels. Recently, President Barack Obama and President Felipe Calderon held meetings to discuss various engagements, including U.S. involvement or lack of involvement in the war efforts. President Obama has encouraged the takeover of all local and state police forces in Mexico by Mexico's military forces, and President Calderon has initiated this transition. President Obama has also recently assigned hundreds more federal agents to the border, along with new technology to further deter the smugglers. These efforts, however, will not likely stop the trafficking industry as the profit margins are so vast. It has been noted by Homeland Security that the United States is not doing enough to help stop Mexican cartels. Actions that need to be taken are a change in fundamental policies regarding import, export, and the selling of firearms in the United States southern states. Obama has acknowledged this, saying we need to do more to make sure that illegal guns and cash aren't flowing back to the cartels. The gun trade policies in the United States are very lenient, and President Bush helped increase violence in Mexico indirectly through backing out on a pledge to ban military-style weapons in southern states. The main factor in this lack of policy is the lack for background checking when purchasing weapons at gun shows, allowing buyers to load up and export the weapons into Mexico to the cartels. From AOL News, we found an article covering the cooperative efforts between Obama and Calderon to combat the drug war, as well as breakthrough in the efforts to end a long-standing border dispute concerning cross-border trucking. In this article, the story is framed around lines of effort to help alleviate Mexico's woes by the U.S. Obama praised Calderon for his courage in fighting the violent drug cartels that have been responsible for deaths on both sides of the border. Obama also pledged to speed up U.S. aid to train and equip Mexican forces. Obama claimed some responsibility for the violence in Mexico, saying, "We're very mindful that the battle President Calderon is fighting inside of Mexico is not just his battle, it's also ours. We have to take responsibility just as he's taken responsibility." From this information, we can see that although the violent drug cartels in Mexico are clearly devastating the Mexican economy and the lives of everyone in that country, that it's forcing United States political leaders and Mexico's government to work together, which is strengthening the relations between these two countries. We can also see that the U.S. is getting involved to help Mexico combat the drug cartels and drug trafficking as it is affecting the United States. From Voice of America, we also found an article concerning a tunnel that was found connecting Mexico and San Diego, California. The tunnel is said to be ventilated and allows for large quantity trafficking of illegal drugs. In the discovery, they also confiscated 14 tons of marijuana. The tunnel is said to be nearly 400 meters long and very solidly built. This article appears to be very objective, reporting only facts without any input from the publication's opinions. This is very interesting since the VOA is the original proponent of U.S. propaganda during World War II and the Cold War. Now we'll take a look at more global publications and see what type of coverage they have over this war. It was not easy to find many resources that care greatly about the United States-Mexico border drug wars that are not directly affected by it. However, we did find research into organized crime that deal with the issue as a global phenomenon. Louise Shelley from the Journal of International Affairs says that global organized crime has become a threat to the nation state. The article says that these cartels are sensationalized by global media, eager for exciting press. We also found that she is concerned with the political landscape post-Cold War, under the light that because of the politics now, there is no globalized effort to stop organized crime, and that is understandable. She also states that since the end of the Cold War, the political landscape has been seeking a new identifiable enemy, so these cartels are beginning to take the limelight, right underneath more aggressive terrorists such as those found in the Middle East like Al-Qaeda. A look in the BBC's Latin American section, we found an article on the deaths of journalists in Mexico. It states that dozens of journalists have been killed since Calderon took office in 2006, and that is one of the most dangerous places to be a journalist in the world. This story is from April 29th, 2012, which is 2 days ago, and covers Regina Martinez, who was found dead in her home in Jalpa, Mexico. She was a correspondent for the weekly magazine Proceso. In comparing domestic articles to international articles, we can see that the U.S.'s perspective is primarily focused on how these violent cartels are affecting our states. Not very much is mentioned concerning deaths, unlike BBC's reporting of specific journalists. We can see that international journalists are more concerned with the cartel activity as a whole as compared to how the U.S. is concerned with its southern border states. President Barack Obama has already said that he will take further steps to help Mexico combat these cartels, but ultimately the war will not end unless the demand in the U.S. and other countries ceases to exist, which is not very likely. This is all that I have for you today. Thank you very much.